Today we're talking about a topic that is very challenging for a lot of people. We're talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big topic, and when someone has deeply offended us, it's natural to think, why should they be forgiven? They don't deserve it, and if that's how you feel, I get you. But today, I'd like to explore why forgiveness is important to your well-being. We're going to look at what forgiveness is, the impact of holding on to resentment, which is unforgiveness, and the benefits of letting it go, and if you find it difficult to let it go, what you can do about it. And what if you were the offender? This is a good conversation, my peeps. Stay with me. Now let's start with what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not putting up with bad behavior for the sake of getting along or for the sake of so-called peace. Forgiveness is not keeping toxic people in your life because you're trying to be a nice person. Forgiveness is not ignoring the hurt, minimizing what happened, or pretending it didn't happen. Forgiveness is not feeling sorry for the perpetrator at the expense of blaming the victim or making yourself the victim. Now, let's look at what forgiveness is and why it matters. Forgiveness is refusing to let an experience continue to control your life. It's choosing peace. It's reclaiming emotional freedom. It's putting down a weight you've carried for years, maybe decades. And if you don't put that weight down, you can die carrying it, unfortunately. Forgiveness is the process of releasing the emotional burden caused by the offense, and this is necessary for healing. Have you realized that unforgiveness means you carry the strain? Think about it like this. You have a brick in your hand and you refuse to let it go. Who's carrying the brick? You're carrying the brick. And after a while, that brick begins to feel heavy and slows you down. All because you believe it punishes someone else. Does that make sense? But again, I ask, who's carrying the weight? You stay connected to the pain. Do you see it? Consider this. Imagine someone replaying the same painful conversation for years. They think about what they should have said, what the other person should have done, how unfair it was. Every replay brings back the same frustration, the same tension, and the same heaviness. The event happened years ago, maybe decades, but their mind and body experience it again and again. The resentment doesn't stay in the past. It becomes part of their daily life, and it will perpetuate into their future if they keep holding on to it. Now, the other person may make their peace with it or not, or whatever. They may even be dead, but you still carry the weight. Do you deserve that? What do you think? I don't think you do. And that is the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness creates a clearing. Forgiveness is a releasing. Imagine you were able to release one emotional baggage after another. How much growth, healing, and freedom you would experience in 6 months, a year, in 3 years, and 5 years. That is why forgiveness isn't about pretending something didn't happen. You have to acknowledge it in order to release it. It's about refusing to let a painful chapter become the author of the rest of your story. Now, let's look at some of the physical impact unforgiveness can have on your body. There are quite a bit of research and tests that measure what happened in the body of those triggered by past hurt. We're going to look at one such test. It's called Remember the Offense Experiment. And this is where a psychologist conducted an experiment where participants recall someone who had deeply hurt them, and they were asked to imagine two different responses: holding on to the grudge and replaying the hurt, or choosing forgiveness. While they did this, the researchers measured their stress responses, heart rate, blood pressure, muscle tension, etc. The results were striking. When participants rehearsed resentment in their minds, their heart rate and blood pressure increased, muscle tension rose, their body showed greater signs of stress. But when they imagined forgiveness, their stress responses were dramatically lowered. What does that tell us? Simply changing how they mentally related to the same painful memory changed what happened inside their bodies. And this cannot be ignored. What is happening in the mind affects your emotions, and the results is experienced in real time in your body. I can testify to the validity of this experiment, that ongoing emotional pain affects the health of the body. When working in the clinic, 9 out of 10 chronically ill clients that met with me bore heavy unresolved hurt. That was no coincidence. In fact, when consulting with the clients, one of the first things I assessed for was trauma, old trauma. It was generally consistent. The connection between unresolved hurt, chronic stress, and physical health is well documented. When emotional wounds remain unresolved, they can keep our minds and bodies in a prolonged state of stress, which over time can affect our overall well-being. So by holding on to resentment to punish someone else, and they may make their peace with it, you remain in the hurt and your body carries the strain. Now, here's the principle behind forgiveness. This principle tells us why we need to let go of resentment and apply forgiveness. There's a passage in scripture that says, "Forgive and you will be forgiven." A quick caveat here. I'm not religious, not in the slightest, but I do have a deep respect for the wisdom found in the word. Whether you approach it from a spiritual perspective or simply as a timeless wisdom, I believe this principle has profound meaning. Here's one possible interpretation. The principle again, forgive and you will be forgiven. Remember, forgiveness is a covering over or a letting go. Forgiveness, however, doesn't excuse the offender. It doesn't excuse the offense. Accountability may still be required, i.e. justice. But justice is not the same as unforgiveness. You can forgive someone, but still require recompense. When we refuse to forgive, then there is no forgiveness for us either. That's the principle. We keep ourselves tied to the hurt. The pain stays with us. So if you're not letting go of the pain, you cannot be released from it either. It's as simple as that. The resentment remains unresolved. We carry the unforgiveness, and in that sense, we don't experience the freedom, the lightness that forgiveness brings because we still carry the weight. Forgiveness isn't only something we give, it is also something we experience when we forgive. In other words, when we forgive others, we receive the benefits of forgiveness onto ourselves. We get the peace, we get the freedom, we get the healing. Now let's add another layer of how this shows up, this principle. When we become generous with forgiveness, often we can generously forgive ourselves. You see, resentment is a dark energy that can be very toxic. Sometimes people who find it difficult to forgive others quietly struggle to forgive themselves. People may never see the self-criticism, the harsh judgments they have toward themselves, or how impatient they are with their own mistakes. Unforgiveness may feel justified, but perhaps one of the most important relationships it affects is the relationship we have with ourselves, how it bleeds into our self-worth and affects our inner peace and personality. You see, because we violated a principle, because we did not forgive, we in turn do not hold forgiveness for ourselves. Forgive and you will be forgiven. If you believe in the Most High, consider the principle, and if we desire forgiveness ourselves in general, we should also be willing to extend it to others. If we stubbornly cling to resentment or unforgiveness, are we in a sense acting as though we have never needed forgiveness? None of us can honestly make that claim. We all fall short. We all make mistakes. We all at some point need grace. Perhaps that's why forgiveness is meant to become part of our character, not because what happened didn't matter, of course it mattered, but because the freedom, peace, and healing that forgiveness brings are far greater than the offender feeling hurt. Your peace, your healing, your freedom are far more important and urgent than someone feeling hurt. Should you wait for someone to make things right before you choose to forgive? At first glance, that sounds logical. We often think healing will come once the other person apologizes, take responsibility, or make amends. But that day may never come. Waiting for healing from the very place where we were hurt can keep you stuck and delay your own healing. Even when someone apologizes, the hurt isn't instantly resolved. Depending on how deep the wound, healing takes time. The healthiest step is to take the initiative and do what's best for your own well-being. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about choosing not to let it continue to have power over your life. I just have to say this again. Forgiveness is about choosing to not let it continue to have power over your life. Forgiveness is a choice before it's a feeling. Let me tell you a story. I once had a supervisor who was harsh and unkind to me. On one occasion, she embarrassed me in front of my colleagues, and that experience stayed with me for a long time. Years later, I happened to see her at the airport. I approached her and reminded her of how she treated me. To my surprise, she couldn't remember the incident at all. She told me she was going through a lot at the time and apologized. And as I walked away, I felt, what a waste of my energy for all those years. I had carried the weight of that experience for years, the shame of it, while she hadn't even remembered it. That day taught me a valuable lesson. Be quick to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because your peace, because my peace does, because your peace does. If forgiveness feels like you're giving someone a free pass, remember this. As long as you hold on to resentment, they still have a hold on you. So consider a simple approach. Quietly choose forgiveness for your own freedom. They don't have to know you've forgiven them. You don't even have to tell them. Forgiveness is something you do within yourself. It's the beginning of releasing the hurt, reclaiming the peace, and moving forward with greater freedom. It starts with saying something to yourself like this: I forgive him or her for this or that. You may shake initially, that's okay. It's part of the healing journey. It may bring up a lot of pain, even tears. That's okay. Sit with it. It will feel better and lighter over time. Remember, forgiveness is a choice before it's a feeling. And just a side note, if after doing that, the ache resurfaces, simply reapply forgiveness. If you've carried unforgiveness for years, even decades, don't expect the hurt to magically disappear. But by taking a forgiveness stance, you have started the process of healing, and you'll feel the situation loosening its grip over time. So what about when we're the ones who cause the hurt? What happens when you're troubled by something you said or did? The same principle applies, but from the other side. When we've wronged someone, the healthiest first step is to acknowledge it, take responsibility and apologize, and make amends where possible. But just as we shouldn't wait for someone else to change before we begin healing, we also can't force another person to forgive us. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, sometimes they need time. And some people are toxic and would be only too happy to see you squirm. It doesn't matter. If we sincerely own our actions, did what we reasonably can to make things right, and learn from our mistakes, then we can extend grace onto ourselves and move on with peace. Otherwise, we carry guilt long after we've done everything within our power to repair the damage. Not every relationship can be restored, and not every apology would be accepted, but we don't have to remain imprisoned by our past forever. Healing begins when we take responsibility, seek reconciliation where possible, and then choose to move forward with humility and compassion. So by doing the right thing, we experience the forgiveness principle. We experience forgiveness onto ourselves. And even if the person is no longer accessible, like they've passed away or they've moved to another location, we can still take responsibility for the wrong and genuinely own our actions. While we may not be able to apologize directly, we can begin healing by acknowledging our mistakes, learning from what we did, and choosing to live differently, and even owning our mistakes before the Most High. In conclusion, healing from emotional hurt is a process. The deeper the wound, the more time healing may require. But, however the depth of the hurt, healing begins when we choose forgiveness. If we wait until we feel ready to forgive, that day may never come. Again, I repeat this statement. Forgiveness is often a choice before it becomes a feeling. Much like courage, much like kindness or generosity, we experience the true benefit of forgiveness only after we choose to practice it. And as we release the weight we've been carrying, we create space for peace, healing, and the freedom to move forward. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you've benefited, please like and subscribe. If you would like Holistic Wellbeing Advisory, where you care for the body, strengthen emotional resilience, and nurture your inner world by creating the conditions for clearer thinking, purposeful and balanced living, reach out. The link is in the description. Until then, have a good one and catch you on the next podcast.